Welcome listeners and viewers far and wide from Madison, Wisconsin to Madison Square Garden, the home of the Comeback Kids. I'm Eirik Gislason, Associate Broker and Team Leader of the Excelsior team at Brown Harris Stevens, Master Certified Negotiation Expert and Instructor, founder of Archway Partners Coaching, and your host of Shearline Negotiation Mastery, the podcast bound and determined to reclaim and restore the good name of negotiation and unlock the door to value creation, win-win solutions, and the true power of integrative negotiation. Now, today, we are going to rip the lid off of the proverbial real estate bucket and talk to an industry insider who's observed and operated in and around the real estate industry for 3 decades. But not only are we going to learn from what he has seen, we're going to talk about what he is seeing and what he sees for the future of our industry, including the integration of AI. Now, if you work with him or if you're one of his over 20,000 LinkedIn followers, you'll agree that he epitomizes the phrase, real estate is a relationship business. And usually when we say that, we're talking about trust, referrals, reputation, communication, and the ability to connect with people in meaningful ways. But our guest is also a tech-forward leader who's vocal about the fact that we're entering a moment where the term relationship is going to be tested in many ways, redefined in some cases, and most certainly established and maintained differently. Because AI is not just a set of new tools, language models, or avatars. It is beginning to challenge how businesses operate, how employees work, how companies protect margins, how teams are trained, how clients are served, and how industries define value. So the question is not simply whether real estate will remain human. That feels too easy. I think the better question is, what changes when a deeply relationship-driven business is forced to adapt to a technology that can dramatically alter workflow, efficiency, staffing, profitability, and expectations? That's why I'm excited to speak to Mr. Marc Lawrence of Worldwide Land Transfer, and we'll do that right after this break from our brand new sponsor.
I'm Marc Lawrence, a founding partner of Worldwide Land Transfer. As a former real estate agent and attorney, I understand this business from every angle. We specialize in the complex transactions that define the luxury market: trust, LLCs, estates, and inherited properties. For more information, contact me directly at 917-204-5363.
From residential and commercial closings to litigation, Romer DeBoss is your full-service real estate law firm. We blend big firm knowledge with boutique-level attention, delivering outcomes that exceed every expectation. Contact us at romerdeboss.com.
All right, and we are back. Now, Marc Lawrence brings over 30 years of diversified real estate experience across law, brokerage, capital formation, title insurance, and 1031 exchange strategy. He began his career as a New York City real estate attorney before transitioning into luxury brokerage as an agent, manager, and investor. Marc is the co-founder of the New York office of Worldwide Land Transfer, a national title insurance agency where he's been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. And he's the founder and managing partner of Callaway Capital Partners, a private investment platform through which he invests alongside select investors in real estate and early stage ventures. Marc is a graduate of the University of Michigan and New York Law School, and he resides in New York with his family. And last, but certainly not least, I want to announce that Marc and Worldwide Land Transfer are now a sponsor of the Shearline Negotiation Mastery podcast. So, Marc, welcome to Shearline. It is a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I mentioned the huge following that you have on LinkedIn. I wanted to before we get into this, I want to learn a little bit more about you and your background. Sure. Because as we prep for this podcast, you're one of the few people in this industry that's had the type of the diverse career within our industry. So, you have over 20,000 LinkedIn followers, and you have this great thing that I'm gonna love from going forward that I saw on your LinkedIn profile. That's called Mark My Words.
Right.
So, which is great. Can you tell us, just go from, how you got to where you are now with that many followers, with that kind of a following, with Mark My Words, and where you are with Worldwide Land Transfer and all of the other various things you do, and kind of take us to there from the beginning?
Sure. That's a lot to talk about. We only have 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but I'll try to hit the high points. Like anything else, I think with LinkedIn, it started day by day. I think I got on there in 2004. Somebody said to me, hey, you should get on this business networking type of platform, which I did. And then slowly over 20 years, if I went out, I brought home a card, I'd connect to them the next day. I actually was, maybe smart in using that as kind of a directory.
Yeah.
What I tend to found was people would change jobs, people would change locations, their phone numbers. But the one thing that wouldn't change is their LinkedIn profile, actually. Even if they change jobs, then they'd put up an announcement. I'm now working here. And so it was a good place to keep tabs on people. And over the first, I think, I'm going to say 16, 18 years on that platform, literally just, connected one by one. And then I think in around 2020, right around COVID, LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft, became more of a content creation platform. And part of the reason, because it's owned by Microsoft, they want to keep people on there. And they're competing against Facebook and Instagram and TikTok now. And, for the business sect, for those that are really kind of, just focusing on their business, it's really kind of the only or the best, I would say, business oriented social media platform. And that's what, I was on, I think back in 2003, one of the my colleagues who worked in marketing with me, she's like, I got to put you on Facebook. And she put me on Facebook, and all of a sudden I reconnected with everyone I hadn't seen for 20 years back then, from high school. And then you start to see people, with their kids and their career, people, you recognize the face. Sometimes it looks a little bit older, sometimes better, sometimes a little worse, but you recognize, the face that you saw in the hall when you were growing up. And, the world changed a lot then, which, I think we're going to move forward when we start talking about AI. And I think AI in some ways, like the internet, like social media is, that's next big, place where we're going, what's going to change the world, and is already starting to change the world.
Yeah. Wow. And so, but you, when you started in this career, you started as a real estate attorney, and then you transitioned like Bess and like many other people in our industry from law or from another career into brokerage. So you spent some time as an agent as well before going into where you are now, correct?
Yep. So right to that point, we jumped into LinkedIn.
No, it's great.
But going back, so I went to law school. Which was an expensive proposition for somebody who hasn't practiced law in 25 years now. Why did I become a lawyer? Actually, the most successful person in our family at the time was my uncle, who is a very successful New York City private personal injury attorney.
Oh, wow,
and he did really well, and he had the big house and the pool. So as a little kid, I said, I want to have that. And, and my parents, I think they said, well, go to law school. And so that's the path I followed. Of course, you never know what you're jumping into, and you're just referencing that people change careers and jobs. I didn't really know what I was jumping into, even though over the summers in law school I'd work in law firms, and the one thing I noticed was that nobody really seemed that happy in the law firms, and everybody seemed kind of bored and angry, which was the first thing I picked up. And I'm generally a pretty jovial, happy guy. No matter what happens, I try to see the positive. And, so I started to see early on that maybe this wasn't going to be where I was going to be for 30, 40 years. And then I graduated from law school, and I practiced primarily as a litigation attorney. So it was very adversarial. And I know you being a negotiation, expert and student of that. And we talked a little bit about this when we spoke last week. Litigation, being adversarial, being a win-win type of game was not for me. I like to think I'm a lover, not a fighter. A fighter when I need to be, but I'm more of a, want everybody to be happy. And so quickly I realized, that nature really did not fit me. I started to do some more transactional work, because at least in transactions, yeah, there's a little bit of back and forth, but the goal is, for somebody who wants to sell some real estate and another person wants to buy it, how do we as attorneys, get the parties there and protecting our parties' interests. So the transactional side was more interesting to me, but again, it was more document oriented, and I always thought of myself more of as a people person. Like I wanted to know. I wouldn't meet people to the closing when I was, the attorney, and but that was the part I enjoyed the most, going to the closing table. Yeah. Thus, it's funny because now I've spent the past 20 years, primarily at the closing table. I cut out the writing part, the drafting, the negotiation part, and I show up, when everybody's ready to shake hands, pass keys along, and and I guess that's the party part, the celebratory part where it all comes together. So it's not directly how I got into title insurance, as you were saying, because so after 7 years of practice law, I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. I had an aunt who was a very successful agent for many years, and she seemed to be doing well, actually, and she liked what she did. So I said, I want to be a real estate agent. And I became, a real estate agent at one of the large brokerage firms. And there was just better feeling in the office. It was more, people were more upbeat. It was more entrepreneurial. It was more, more my speed. Yep. And as you mentioned, one of the people, that I had the benefit of working, side by side when she started out was the CEO of Brown Harris Best Friedman. She showed up a couple of years, when I was in the office, and and she had come from a law background as well. Yeah. So we kind of hit it off, and and I said, I think she's going to be amazing, and I think not just as an agent. And sure enough, as a really groundbreaking executive, and I'm really not that surprised at where she's gone, but I'm really happy to see that. It means a lot because she's a really good person. Oh, she is. She's amazing, and it's fantastic that your paths crossed. Mm-hmm. What's also amazing to me is that your story, you talked about you kind of inched toward the thing that you love doing the most until you got to where you are now, and doing title, and that it's really incredible how your journey has taken you to where you are now. And I want to, we're going to move forward and talk about AI, but what I want to start with a little bit more grounding in how things are in our industry now. So you've had a 3-decade career as an agent, manager, operators we just talked about. So when you look back, what are the biggest changes that you've seen from then until now in how the industry actually operates? Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And a lot of it, this industry, the real estate industry, is about information. And with respect to information, I think when I started, as a lawyer, I think people were just having computers on their desk. I mean, when I came out of college, I think I got my first cell phone. So it's amazing to see how technology has crept into life. And now, we're at the precipice of, AI, where, the internet was, kind of static information. This is more interactive information, and the access to information, I think, is groundbreaking of what we're going to see. Yeah. I was just playing with the newest version of Claude, actually Claude 5, which just came out. And even in a year of, really kind of getting myself familiar with AI, it's evolved, and it's getting better to a point where, Claude 5, which I think is called Sable or something like that, is, the government has been, it warns about it, that it could be dangerous. Yes. The amount of information, about it. So I think, again, information, real estate has been, if it's about pricing, it's, what's the history of that site and other sites around it. So now we all have access to this incredible amount of information. Yeah, so true. And on the other side of things, what hasn't changed? I mean, with all the market cycles, the technology shifts that you talked about. I mean, like you said, we dial back 30 years, and people didn't have computers at their desk, and then we had the BlackBerry, and then it was the iPhone, or cell phones weren't even a thing 30 years ago, obviously. So when we look at all that technology and shifts in technology, what hasn't changed in our industry? Yep. I actually even want to quote off of my notes because, I wrote something that I think, really kind of, to me, I think it really answers that question really well, which is, deals are still made by people. They're killed by ego and they're saved by trust.
Wow.
So
is that your quote? I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, so true.
So I had to read it because I was going to mess it up if I just said, but that's what hasn't changed is that, people still make deals, egos ruin deals.
Yeah.
And again, trust is what saves deals. And that kind of bleeds into, into the AI, that now the information game has elevated, tremendously, and everybody has access to that same information, and now how you use that information, and is going to be the differentiator because now we're in an even playing field. Although I looked at statistics last week that showed me so few people, are masters of AI. Very few people, of the 84 million people in the world are using AI regularly.
Yeah.
So, still, if you haven't used it, I would say, jump on it. Don't be afraid of it. I have some people that we recently, hired in our company at Worldwide. And, that's the thing, we've been saying to them is, hey, play around, get used to it, utilize it. We'll show you some of the things we're doing, with it that are going to change the game.
So let's move. So let's shift into AI. So, we talk about the human side of our industry. I love that quote, that idea of ego killing deals and trust saving deals. And it's interesting because both of those are very, very human. Ego being on the bad side, AI can probably remove a lot of what ego breaks in our deals.
Right.
But AI is going to have a hard time taking care of that trust piece.
Yeah.
So I love the two sides of that coin. So we talk about the human side in our industry and that aspect, that building community, building relationships really, really well. But you also know a lot about AI, as we're finding out here. So when you think about AI as a true business disruption, where do you think it will hit real estate, development, title, and related industries first?
Really what we're seeing is with respect to documentation. Real estate is a paper-intensive business, and contracts. Back in the day, I remember that paper being all over people's, desk. I remember it being in Redwells when I was a lawyer, in file cabinets, paper everywhere. If you went down to the courthouse, there was just reams of paper, and so that's changed a lot in the last 30 years because everything then became digitized. And so then everything, that was scanned, and then, all of that paper, you can go onto the computer and find it. So we're finding, really, anything relating to paper and in the information, on that paper or digitized, information now is now easily, summarized. And the title industry is probably the bullseye, I would say, for AI,
really?
because it's a document intensive business. And it's a rinse and repeat type of business too. Although, each deal often has its nuance or problem. You hit a roadblock, and the roadblocks actually, and how you deal with them, that's going to be the difference between, really who's successful moving forward, because the access to the information, is now an even playing field. So everyone having that access, but how you respond when you pick up the phone and actually have a conversation. These are things that, that I don't want to group you as being, in my age group, because you're much younger and better looking than I am. But, picking up the phone and having a conversation and listen, I have a 25-year-old daughter, and, she's lived with that thing, that phone in her hand, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it documents, gets great pictures when you're out, and when the Knicks won last night, I'm sure there's lots of good videos at the bar. Actually, I know there were. I saw that last night, and you can remember that good time, or even you go to a concert now and everybody's phone is out. If people don't live in the moment, they record the moment.
They look at the stage through their phone.
But, so I would say that young people, having grown up in a in a different world. We grew up talking, to each other.
Yeah.
I went outside, I played. Now I'm sound like my father. I played until my mom, yelled for me to come back in and eat dinner. She didn't, text me, hey,
Right.
where are you? So it's really a very much a different world. But again, the differentiator I think is really going to be, when those issues come up in transactions, and I said titles, kind of the bullseye, because, we're looking at a lot of documentation, deeds, contracts of sale, mortgages. Now, instead of our team having to individually read through the documents, now, we scan it. One of the things that amazed me that I saw that we're doing were surveys. Doesn't come up that much often in, with respect to sale of apartments, co-ops, and condos, but townhouses, homes, you get a survey done showing you the meets and bounds description of the property. And, we have to take a look at that survey and compare it to the deed to make sure the description matches up. That was something that took sometimes, an hour or two for somebody on our team to do. Now it takes 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And, but we need a good person, and we can get in, and I think we're going to get into, is it going to eliminate jobs?
Yeah.
It's not going to eliminate jobs. It's going to make each employee more efficient at what they do. So instead of spending that time, in something now that AI can do, again, this in a more, supervisory role or in a more, review type of role, that's really kind of, where we're headed, I think.
Yeah, and obviously from our audience, they're what a lot of people working in this industry, I think, where their concern is does this start to eliminate my job? Do I become obsolete? So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about that right after we come back.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. We work with Brown Harris Stevens and many other top real estate firms, staging their homes to sell quickly and at the highest price possible. Our staging is affordable without sacrificing quality or design. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, and we are back with Marc Lawrence. All right, Marc, so we were just talking about how this is going to change the workforce and how, what jobs look like with as AI becomes more and more a part of our everyday work day. So do you think AI will mainly help companies do more with the same number of people, or will it fundamentally change how companies staff, how they train, and how they structure their teams?
Yeah, that's another really good question, and it's something that we're actively working on. I'm proud to say that fortunately, I have our CEO is very tech forward and at Worldwide, and really implementing a lot of the AI into our work process. So what we're seeing first really is and we keep on hiring, which is good. It means hopefully that we have more work. And I specifically asked our CEO, are we we keep on hiring. If people say AI, they're going to downsize, but we're right sizing, and good people are still a commodity to have. What we're seeing in the AI really is the capacity. So if we had an employee that was able to handle 25 files, actively going, now with the AI, what we're trying to do is put 50 files onto that file, put 75, 100. So it's just the capacity of the employee, the ability to handle more in scale. So you still need good people, but those good people, are able to do more. And as part of that too, what we're seeing, is the workforce, I used to think, as a triangle kind of.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, underlings, and you learned when you started out, and the better people got promoted to mid-level management,
Sure.
and, the best got up to the top. Now I think you're going to start to see more of the workforce kind of like a diamond, in that you need less of those, people running around doing the low level,
Yeah.
or the introductory beginner type of document review, and the starting level job, and you're needing more middle management, or more of those people that are basically interpreting the information that AI is spitting out, and making sure it's the right information, that it's sent to the client, and again, as I said, communicating with the client. Not, some of the emails, now can be very easily, done through AI, and
Yeah.
those have, you're going to see now. I wonder, whenever I get an email, my first question is AI, or
Yeah.
the person writing.
Yeah, did I see an M dash, or what is it?
The dash
word
is,
hype.
is something that people look for.
Right.
But I think we're going to see more organizations that it's a shift away from that the busy type of work. That's where AI is really going to again, and that will go to companies' margins at the end of the day, because not because they're laying off people and saving and having less employees, but just inefficiency.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to throw this one at you,
Yeah.
because, and as I think of as you're describing that diamond shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And offloading some of those tasks, and becoming more productive. As real estate professionals, one of the questions that we have with AI in our industry is it going to lower the per transaction fee that we earn, or are we going to do more to maintain the same level of volume or of profitability? Or do you think that there are some companies that are just they're going to embrace this to the point where they are so efficient that their profitability becomes exponential because of AI? Is it maintaining, or is it?
I think some of the companies that embrace it, their profitability is going to increase, their efficiency, the quality of their work product is going to increase. So I think the workplace in as a whole is elevating, through the use of AI. I mean, that employee that couldn't write an email doesn't need to
Sure.
actually have had that ability to write a decent email.
Yeah.
Just knows how to write something and put it into AI and say, can you revise this? And so you've taken that. So again, I don't expect to see bad emails. I don't expect to see grammatical mistakes in emails anymore. Because it just means that the company is not implementing the tools that it has available to itself. I came from a law background. I've spoken to a number of lawyers. I'm getting a different viewpoints. Some lawyers say, oh, it's wrong, it makes up cases, I never see it, and those are the ones that I think that are holding on to the past. They think that that it's going to replace them. It might, it could drive down fees. And you talked about that with being a real estate agent. But instead, that property description that maybe took an hour to write,
Sure.
Those photos that the marketing department and the brochures, they could be done. I mean, I have no graphical artist skills whatsoever, and I come up with a graphic on every single LinkedIn post, and
Sure.
and I post 6 times a week. Are they professional? They're way better than anything I could have ever done, and I have zero art ability. I just literally prompt the AI to say, hey, listen, can you change this or that? Or then even if I don't know, I said, what do you think of this? And it will tell me this is a 7 if you change this and that. And I said, then change it. And so it's the best assistant that you could, not pay $20 a month for.
Well, and the thing that's amazing, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking there's that specialization that could come from this as well. Because if I'm an employee, and let's say I do 1 or 2 or 3 things incredibly well, but I don't write emails well, I'm not a graphic designer, or I'm an entrepreneur who puts this amazing content out on LinkedIn, and the content's good, but I can't attract people to it.
Right.
And now all of a sudden AI has given you the ability to to not have to worry about the things that you're not great at.
Right.
And for people to find the great content, even though you used to have to do steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 well for them to get to the content.
Yeah.
Now you can have AI do the first 4 steps and your content's great, people are going to find it.
Yeah.
And that seems like it could be a great something that works well for real estate professionals as well, where they're good at certain things, they're not good at others, and they offload some of those things that really don't determine whether they're a great real estate agent.
Right. If you embrace it and you know what your weaknesses are, you can quickly, elevate or eliminate those weaknesses, bring you up to, as competitive. Listen, if I'm a great agent because I know a crowd that all owns $10 million homes.
Yeah.
I don't think AI can do that actually. Although, listen, don't be surprised. How, you put that in there as a search. Hey, listen, how do I sell $10 million homes, and how do I get around that crowd? You'll get a detailed answer from it. Say hang out at go to become a member of this charity, join the Soho House. It will make suggestions like that. So you'll have you could find a path pretty much to anything. If you know how to use it.
Or how do I write content? Like the whole GEO strategy now. How do I write content that when a $10 million seller or buyer is searching or prompting on a learned language model?
Yeah.
How can I write content that is going to put me in front of them when they search on that model, when they search on chat, or they're searching on Grok?
Exactly. A lot of the lawyers tell me that now they get emails from their clients who are playing lawyer because they write emails saying hey, listen, did you consider this defense in the case? How come it's not estoppel or and they're throwing out legal terms that they probably have no idea, but AI wrote it for them. So now the lawyers, actually, I got a retainer from a lawyer recently that specifically said in it that you will, not rely upon AI for legal advice. You're hiring me, and although I'm willing to discuss certain things, don't lawyer me. You're hiring me because for my skills. Not to debate with me vis-a-vis through AI. Different legal points. So
we get the same thing in real estate.
I'm
obviously.
sure, right?
And we don't
certainly
have
with negotiation. You being a negotiation expert. I mean, you get an offer letter, and I'm sure now that 90%, but half of the agents will put it through as how do I respond to this offer?
Absolutely.
And then how do I respond aggressively? How do I respond politely? How do I respond to get to this point?
Yeah.
And you'll get suggestions. So again, it's definitely. It's sharpening, I think, the tools of agents. So I think the ones that embrace it, and I've heard that, from a lot of people, it's not going to eliminate, but it's going to make the good ones better. The ones who are good in embracing it, even better.
Well, it's interesting. Some people ask me sometimes, because I train real estate agents in collaborative negotiation. They're like, well, why would you train people that are in your market, your competition, to be better negotiators? Doesn't that seem counterproductive? And I always say, hey, if everybody in our industry could learn the skills, the strategies, the techniques of collaborative negotiation, we would all have better outcomes with our clients.
Sure.
So if these hard bargaining negotiators who really don't understand the best way to represent their client or negotiate well on behalf of their client, if they are consulting AI to get better responses, I think maybe that might help with some of our conversations, because some of the stuff that we get from a negotiator or a counterpart on the other side of a deal is suspect.
Yeah, hopefully when they start to utilize it, you won't get an offer back, or that you said, this is just ridiculous, or
exactly.
I don't want to use the word stupid, but sometimes the response is stupid, or maybe AI will suggest don't counter offer, say, hey, listen, this is where we're at. So incorporating some of the tools that you've learned and being an expert in negotiation, now you can utilize AI to learn some of that, or still hire somebody like yourself and teaching other agents, it makes the industry better. So I applaud you for providing your services, your expertise, and sharing that with with other agents. I always say that too. Like I go to an event and people will say, "Oh, do you want to come because there's another title insurance person there?" Right. I want to be there. Actually, I want to talk to them, and I want to see what they're doing. I mean, 80% of the people, are, good people, and, they've got different strategies, and collaboration is always a better, than to compete. I hate to compete, and maybe that goes back to why I didn't stay as a lawyer.
And why you've thrived in the business that you have, the businesses that you have.
Right. The only person I'm ever going to compete with is myself. Yeah. I feel like, and living up to my own expectations and goals, and that should be, most people in the real estate business is, don't be jealous of the person who's, just got that, $10 million listing, find out, how'd you get that listing, and how you marketing it. So there's always something to be learned, and again, we talked about ego killing deals. Jealousy, destroys so much. Actually.
Yeah, especially your own bit. Jealousy will destroy your own career.
Yeah,
you're only hurting yourself on that one.
Right. Back in the day, when everybody was in the office as a real estate agent, what was everybody else doing? It's like instead of focusing on your own stuff, it's good when you're sharing and you're learning. Sure. And that was, early on in my law career, walking into someone's office, bouncing an idea off someone, nowadays, right? Where are we not going to walk into someone's office and bounce an idea off them? No, we're going to go to the computer. We're going to bounce the idea off of AI. So it's, as I said, a really changing world where they're at the precipice of really, I think, a new dawn, a new era. Yeah. It's exciting, but for a lot of people, it's scary. It calls, your inabilities and your inefficiencies and your weaknesses, sometimes come to the table, because of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that brings me to a great final question for you. And because we talk about our weaknesses and our strengths, if AI makes certain parts of the work faster, cheaper, more automated, how does that change? I'm going to ask you for real estate professionals specifically. How do you think that changes the way that real estate professionals explain and defend their value when they have to do a value proposition in a pitch for a client? How is that going to change that value proposition?
Well, again, I think it's going to come, I'm going to reuse the word trust again. The information, should be there and easy to tap into. But how are you going to gain, a client's trust? Part of it is reputation. We talked about, relationships, and that's a big part of business. But, even more so important than relationships, is reputation, and the relationships really kind of spread reputation around. So the more people and the more people who have, a positive viewpoint of who you are, how you do business, is gonna follow you. And listen, a lot on the LinkedIn to original thing we were talking about, and myself, me posting a lot on LinkedIn. People will come up to events. Say, I know you from LinkedIn. Part of that is trying to build reputation, and sometimes it's not even things that I really am an expert in. But if I tell people I'm an expert in, they start to believe you. Especially if you tell them in writing, or if you could put an example to it. Stories, people still like to read, stories. That's the connection part. Yeah. But reputation and trust, that is something AI will never be able, to do. It can help you with it, but that is going to, carry us forward, I think.
I love that. And I will say the things that you're posting on Mark My Words is it's so relatable. And I think one of the things that it's so attractive about it, and why there's so many comments, likes, and there's so much interaction on those engagement on those posts, is it's relatable. The content is so incredibly relatable. So, that idea of trust and reputation, all of that is relationship based, and that again brings us right back to where we started.
Yeah, actually another really good word I think that comes in here is authenticity.
Yeah.
You have to be authentic. You have to be yourself. You have to fake it till you make it. We were talking about this the other day, actually, with a colleague who had, an opportunity with, a really great business opportunity, but yet, we didn't necessarily, even as a company, didn't have the experience in this particular niche. But, we said we have to take the other experience that we have, bring it, fake it a little bit till we make it, but still be authentic.
Yeah.
So authenticity, is really, that hasn't changed either. And I'll even reveal a little secret. Mark my words. Where did I come up with it? I didn't. AI came up with it, so I'm gonna, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but I wrote almost all of my posts, for like a year, and I think in writing something, it said, gave me that tagline, and I really liked it, and I kind of went with it, but that was from my creative marketing firm. AI, and the logo that came along with it was also created, on AI. So, and again, I'm not a techie. I'm not, completely, savvy. I can't go on Canva and make pretty pictures, but, I know how to prompt in that, from playing around a lot, I'm fascinated by what it could do. It's gave me my tagline. Hopefully one day I'll say it gave me everything. It didn't give me everything because fortunately I had 30 years to accomplish some things on my own. Well, but really, I'm 57 years old. I can't imagine 10 years from now, where it's me. And, as an old guy, I'm going to have to tap into, I remember when I didn't have a computer, and now my life is, revolves around everything, that technology, has given to me. Yeah, or it's made my life easier. I should say. It's not going to change, the authentic, person who I am. It's not going to change the trust that I built with people or the reputation, for doing right by people. Because again, honesty, ethics, doing the right thing, that it can't teach you that. Yeah. So, there's a lot that, that there's two paths. There's the AI path, which is going to, change the world, and the human path that is going to keep life, as we know it, hopefully somewhat normal.
And I love just bringing that together, because I think that there is, especially for people who have had a significant career already, who have been in business, who have had 20, 30, 40 years of building a career, and now merging that with AI, there's probably even more of a benefit or a launch point, because you do have that 30 years of building community, building a reputation, building authenticity, and then merging that with the benefits of AI is a great launch point for people.
Yeah, so I take pride in the fact that I'm more savvy in AI than my 25-year-old.
Yeah, right.
Who you think, and actually it's funny, I've read that a lot, that you would think younger people would be more comfortable and would take it up, but they seem to shy away from it and not really want to embrace it. Maybe, because, they are moving to, they want the things that we had. And I've heard that before from other young people that, I wish I can grow up where I didn't have a phone. Can you imagine? I have heard some young people say, I wish I grew up in a world where there was no social media. So, it's interesting to sit here, at this point in my life and in my career, and having seen, both of, or the world, evolve. It's interesting. And, and it's going to continue to get really interesting.
Well, I agree. And Marc, I am so thankful to have you here on the podcast. I'm thankful for this conversation. And I'm really glad you're on board as a sponsor for this podcast, and I look forward to having future conversations with you.
Yeah, no, I think what you're doing, with this podcast is great. I see, there's a lot of real estate content out there. Yeah. I like when it's niche, and and your angle with respect to the negotiation, and and some of the experience and things that you bring to the table makes this really interesting
podcast to watch. It's different, than some of the other stuff out there. And so when it drops, I'm looking forward to finding some downtime and listening to it. So, and that's going to continue forward. So thank you for, I'm happy to be now on the episode. So when you look back, you'll see, my episode, to contribute to this really, great podcast and what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so we're going to do a few key takeaways, or the key takeaways for our audience here from our conversation with Marc. And I think, short and sweet, what lies before us is not really a choice between technology and relationships. It's about understanding how technology changes the way relationship-driven businesses operate. And I think Marc's career is a great example of that balance. As we talked about, over 3 decades, he's built a business and a brand around connection, credibility, trust, and access, and authenticity, as he talked about. But it's but he's also not standing still. He's looking ahead, embracing technology, and thinking seriously about how AI will change the way companies operate, train, communicate, compete, and create value. And that's the combination that really matters. Real estate is always dependent on trust, on reputation, communication, access, authenticity, and judgment. Those things are not going away. But AI is going to change the pace of the business, the expectation of our clients, the structure of teams, the way companies protect margins, and the way professionals prepare for important conversations. We still need to prepare. We still need to understand the client, the market, the risks, the options, and the pressure points. AI can help us organize information, compare scenarios, identify patterns, draft communication, and create more strategic options. But the agent still has to know what matters so they can negotiate better outcomes on behalf of their clients. And that's Shearline, everyone. As a reminder, you can support this show by subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just go to getmorenetwork.com, and there you can check out all of the amazing shows on the More Network, including past episodes of Shearline. You can follow me all over Instagram at archway.partners, as well as on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Eirik the Expert. You can contact the Excelsior team at BHS by going to bhsusa.com, and you can connect with my company, Archway Partners Coaching, by visiting archwaypartnersinc.com to learn more about our coaching community, training opportunities, including our Archway Partners Mighty Network called the Archway Immersive Platform, which is a growing community of agents with access to hours of content, group coaching, modules, scripts, and all kinds of value. So check that out at archwaypartnersinc.com. And remember, there's a key for every lock, but it's the right combination of grooves, cuts, and teeth that lift the pins and create the shear line. Until next time, keep turning curiosity into connection, mystery into mastery, and keep unlocking what's possible. We'll see you next time, everybody.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.